Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Big Boys Table episode 48, Heat Wave 2020. What's up, Mask?
I'm sweaty.
Sweaty?
You want a taste?
2020? That's a rhyme.
Yeah. You fucking rhymed. You next Eminem?
You rhymed.
No, you.
So we actually have a couple of topics that we can talk about this episode, but just wanted to get it out of the way. Why the fuck is it so hot? Why have we not just moved the sun away from the earth? Why has mankind not fixed this problem? Why?
Why hasn't anyone just blasted it with piss yet?
True, you could extinguish the sun with the force of Ahmed's piss. All right,
Weed.
so,
That's
have you
what we
even?
need.
Do you know who Ahmed is? Did I ever explain this to you?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah,
If you did, it was a long time ago.
Yeah. So Ahmed started out as like a. Do you remember the strapping young lad Demon Slayer? He used to post on forums.
Wasn't he like a Muslim?
I think he might be ethnically Indian, but I'm not sure.
Indian. I guess that might make sense. I know I saw him and he looked like either a stereotype Muslim or maybe I guess a stereotype Indian.
He could be.
I didn't really
Arabian
peg him for an
instead.
Indian,
I have
though.
no idea. I don't know really much about him. I used to have him on Facebook when I still used that website. So a long
I think
time ago.
he there was something memey about him, but it was a while I can't remember.
I don't know. There was one point where I think he put his campaign creation signature, or maybe it was his starboards, or not starboards, starcraft.org forum warboards, that one. I think there's a signature where he had a link to Starred it, and he said, "Don't go there unless you like authoritarian assholes," or something. And that was his signature on another forum. It's like low-key advertising. That was back when I think he was like this is like years ago, man. This is actually like 2006 or something. But there was some bit where Excalibur was saying that anybody who can't make a melee map should not post their melee maps here. It was basically like just putting a hardline stance that they would just delete thread or lock threads if they contained low quality content, which I think is like really bizarre.
That didn't stick around.
No, for one, it definitely didn't stick around. For another, it's really bizarre because it just completely stifles anybody's ability to improve in theory. Like, if you take that to its logical conclusion, then even people who would be open to
2006, the site was already dead. Like, what were they trying to do?
I don't know, but anyway, that's all I remember. Maybe those. It's been so long, I might be conflating those two events, but that might have been what happened to him. He also made a custom campaign, which I have been told. I think he was trying to update that, like. It was before everything was called a remaster, but he was trying to update that maybe like a couple months after it came out, and then a year after it came out, and then like 5 years after it came out. He just kept coming back to it, but I don't think he ever did. So that's fine. Anyway, trying to think of where I was going with that. Oh yeah, so originally I wanted to have like basically just a stereotype that was going to be kind of like him or inspired by his personality. And that guy was going to be Ahmed. And then at some point it became obvious that he was more like me than anybody else. So Ahmed became a stereotype of me. And then at some point I decided he was black. And then my family was driving down a highway. And there's a place in Massachusetts called Saugatuck. And I said, holy shit, that's an amazing name for a city. That's going to be Ahmed's last name. And I don't think there was no decision making beyond that, I don't think. But that's Ahmed Saugatuck. That's where he gets his last name from. And then we made up a whole my personal like my mother and my brother. We all made up this backstory to Ahmed, where he was a pickle farmer. He would farm pickles and leave mustard in his socks or something. I forget what the context was behind that one. He would like sleep with mustard socks on. I think that was just because some Russian guy told me to do that one day, and because it would get rid of my cold. That was not really related, but we decided to add that to Ahmed. So there's a lot of disconnected insanity that I just rolled into the same character. And now, fast forward here, it's not really important how he got to where he is now, but that's his origin point, basically, and some of his more foundational modifications and character developments. And now he's it's become revealed to him that he is a deity without knowing that he's a deity. Like, he's too stupid to realize he's a god. And so he just like occasionally erratically wills certain things into existence by speaking them or having dumb ideas or just being angry that he doesn't have enough chicken. That was the other thing, is when he was first transported into the mutant midget dimension, which Borderlands stole from me. I'm suing them. But the mutant midgets were like the basic quintessential enemy in Ahmed's campaign, and Ahmed really liked to cook them because he's a fire bat. So he liked to cook them and eat them, and he called it Micken because it's midget chicken. And so he's addicted to chicken, or Micken, really chicken in any variety. He really likes chicken. And somewhere in the universe, there is a pile of chicken that gets eaten infinitely. It's not an infinite pile, but once the chicken pile is empty, the Ahmed that is eating that chicken becomes the next chicken pile, and another Ahmed appears to eat that chicken. And that cycle goes on forever, and that is what fuels the god Ahmed. Also, there's 1 million Ahmed clones. Every firebat in history of all StarCraft events has been Ahmed, and I think there was something else that was going on there. All Ahmed characters, all Firebat characters, those are all Ahmed in disguise, but they're like rogue Ahmed clones that have lost their mind and forgotten who they were. And meanwhile, the real Ahmed that you follow around when you're walking around when you're playing as Ahmed, that is the real Ahmed. That's always the real Ahmed, but you never really know for sure. And that's the dilemma, the duality of Ahmed. And so now you know who Ahmed is.
The Ahmedality.
Yeah. So he's pretty much my greatest invention.
That is definitely something else.
I like that I was able to walk you guys through the whole process of his creation too, and how he started out as a stereotype and he evolved into a deity. And now he's loved by the hearts and minds of all mankind, I guess. I don't know. Anybody who knows my server knows about Ahmed. So anybody who's part of this community, you give back to this community with Ahmed. You understand that?
You give Ahmed to this community.
PayPal me some chicken. So, other random chicken thoughts that occurred to me as I was reciting that. I actually watched some of our Legacy of the Void playthrough, and that has some really funny shit in it. There's a few parts where we're just like, at some point you get up to go make coffee, and you come back and all you see is me moving a couple zealots down a ramp and then luring a couple zerglings that immediately get bullied back into existence afterwards up my photon cannons. So I did that like at least 5 times in a row for you. So it's some pretty good bits. If you I'll just shill that content. That's pretty good content.
Yeah.
What have you been up to in the interim here, between our last podcast and now? How's things been?
I did complete the 4th segment processing for the Dark Souls 3 randomizer thing that I streamed last year. So that's the first significant video anything I've done in I think since like January. So it was pretty significant. The project obviously still isn't finished yet, but it was nice to at least get something done for a change. So I'm hoping we can kind of, move on from there. Beyond that, I'm mostly working on just D&D stuff. Well, the last few days I haven't really been doing too much of anything. It's been just a non-stop sea of fucking insanity everywhere. But yeah, that's really mostly it. It's really just been like a lot of image processing and stuff like that. I've got an article that I'll probably be releasing soon. It's just a short one. It's just called Fuck WebP, because WebP is gross and people are still using it and they're gross.
What is WebP besides Patrick's design language of choice?
WebP is basically a shittier version of JPEG that Google pushed out for reasons inexplicable, and a lot of programs can't open it, and it has forced chroma subsampling, and the uncompressed thing does nothing. and a lot of editors don't support it out of the box. And a lot of the times the file size is maybe a few kilobytes smaller than JPEG, but looks a lot worse. Or it's just flat out like larger, significantly larger. So the article has a little Windows shell script to batch convert folders of this trash and get rid of it in case you want to reprocess this stuff for whatever reason. I run into it a lot when I'm going through Yandex or anything equivalent, because for some reason a lot of middleware is using it. Fucking wiki sites and Pinterest and other shit have this annoying tendency of using that format. It's really, 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 really annoying.
I wonder if that's what Twitter uses too sometimes or something, because I know that you actually have to use a mobile device or something in order to save images from Twitter. Like you can't do it from your desktop. I wonder if that has.
Well, there are websites that'll just rip stuff off of Twitter for you if you want to, but yeah, Twitter is using a lot of cancer. Twitter is very gross.
Pretty incredible how all of these sites, like there was some conversation that we referenced, or a talk that we referenced, the Jonathan Blow, that guy is comically named, very unfortunate for him. But he was talking about how the only thing that has been holding any technical industry aloft is the advancements in hardware, because it's been making up for shittier and shittier software development. So that kind of, I mean, everywhere you go, you find some evidence to back up that assertion anyway. And
well, the problem is, like, that's actually a fucking like crutch, because what it just means is that people just have more and more, depths to their laziness. Oh, people are running fucking 12, 16, 32 gigs of RAM. I guess it's okay if I let a chat application use 2 gigabytes of RAM instead of 100 megabytes of RAM. So now you have websites that load a half dozen or more fucking individual JavaScripts. You've got Twitter and stuff like that loading more fucking words and lines of text and fucking novels just to view like individual lines of text. Like, it's fucking insane how slow and cumbersome the internet is.
And it didn't always used to be that way.
No, it's sad, but the internet was more responsive in the days of 56K than it is today. And it's all because of shit like fucking JavaScript.
Yeah, well, I actually wanted to talk a little bit about a bunch of different things, but I suppose we can actually use that as a jumping off point, because that principle that things used to be better a while ago seems to be holding true in pretty much every field I can think of. Like, obviously, there's some fields that just flat out didn't exist back then. Like, I don't really think that years and years ago there was that much of a focus on a lot of different technical stuff that just popped up recently, like AI development or whatever. That's obviously not related to games specifically, but it's like the cars that you have now and stuff. But why do you think is it that there seems to just be so much wrong with, like, as we get further and further away from the origin point of any particular industry or field or discipline or craft, things just get more muddied down and bizarre and generally worse, like on an objective sense, especially a performance sense. Like, why does that seem to happen? It seems like for me anyway, from what I can tell, the best stuff that you get is close to the beginning, even though that shouldn't happen. Like, this is all related to technical stuff. Obviously, as people learned techniques back in, the like man-made or manual crafts like construction, but I guess even that has taken a turn for the worse recently. But it seems to me that it used to be that people would overall learn more as time goes on, and they would record their knowledge to be passed down to the next line of people who would come in and take up the craft. And maybe that is still happening in some capacity, but clearly, as things are supposedly getting better, especially when it comes to software, but just in general, I think any sort of technical or information-based industry is getting worse over time. And like, why was it that it was actually better before? Like, do you have any hypotheses, any interesting thoughts on that?
Well, generally speaking, people had standards back then, and it was also a much more competitive industry than it is now. Nowadays, since everybody is so apologistic, there is no real drive for quality. People think anything is art. People think that art can't be criticized, so on and so forth. I mean, that alone just immediately strips out like all forms of entertainment can never have good quality content, so long as people obsessed by that mindset, because they have no driving force behind, you know, any kind of real pursuit of improvement to begin with. And then to make matters like 1,000 times worse, we get into this issue where we have the fact that stuff is so much easier to get into now. So, for example, it's way easier to get into making just making a game. Anybody can just hop in and just make a game today. There's like no effort required. You don't need any technical skills. All you need is just a little bit of pocket change, and that's it. And you can make a game. You can slap a game together in just a couple weeks or less, as evident by StarCraft 2 and Diablo 3. And I mean, obviously, when you go into the corporate thing, when you have an audience that has been groomed to accept eating shit and just likes to eat shit, you don't need to actually really pursue making quality content, because that would be expensive. You know, you would have to hire people who have experience making. I mean, first you have to find somebody to hire. And now we've gone from the point, like, one of the biggest catalysts was really when 3D first entered gaming. When 3D first entered gaming, that was definitely one of the big catalysts. But also, like, the westernization of stuff like arcades and stuff like that also dropped a lot of quality and things like that. Because the Western arcades and stuff are very greedy. They put things on the highest difficulty and stuff like that. They're just there just to make the quick buck out of people. And, you know, that's what killed arcades in the West. Companies like Midway and stuff like that. But also just 3D in general was really bad, and the big push for 3D was really bad. I mean, even to this day, we still don't see really that many 3D games that look any good, much less are really like comparatively as good 2D titles. And that's pretty sad, but it's just like a really immature technology that people really haven't put a lot of time into improving. And 3D was this newfangled thing that people had to jump on just because it was new and fangled, and that's really the only reason why. And, you know, now we have, I think it was Lucid Iguanu who said that StarCraft 2 is better than StarCraft 1 just because it's 3D. Something to that extent, basically speaking. So it's like they don't actually have any, like, opinion for that grounds. It's just they think that because 3D is more complicated that it's better. But that's never been the case. You know, more complicated has always been a bad thing. But, you know, we fast forward like, you know, 20 years or so after that point, and we've basically eliminated all the need to actually understand how any of this technology works at all, because everything is driven by middleware, everything is driven by, you know, investors, everything is driven by pay pegs, everything is driven by things that are not really connected to the developer at all. The developer is not connected to their own software. The vast majority of people making games don't even understand how the engine works that they're dealing with. It's a very far cry from the pre-PlayStation 2 eras, where a lot of engines, but not all of them, but a lot of them were usually in-house, or at least they were, you know, in-house in the terms of like they were shared in the developer and maybe used for multiple titles. But otherwise they were something that they created and they worked intimately with. Now, a lot of the engines were absolute garbage, sure, but the thing is, to even make a garbage title for something like, you know, the SNES or whatever, you still had to have way better and way more effective programming skills in your staff than Blizzard or any other, you know, large company has on staff to this day. The vast majority of modern companies to this day do not have programmers that are really skilled in anything at all. They have people who know scripting languages like JavaScript or Net or something like that. They don't actually know programming. This is a very big difference between, you know, scripting and programming. And they don't have anybody who has low-level programmers. And you can actually see this even in companies that are actively trying to hire these kinds of people, like Epic, because Epic is very strapped and understaffed, because they're one of the few companies that's left that's actually trying to develop low-level material, because they're developing, you know, the industry-leading engine right now. And they just don't have enough hands to go around, for the plain and simple fact that there just isn't that many hands to go around. There's just not many people who really get into this kind of stuff anymore because it's not really I'm pretty sure it pays very well, but it is a very complicated subject. Like working with 3D is much more complicated than working with 2D. Getting into like actual shader programming and low level programming and stuff like that is very difficult. A lot of the stuff that gets implemented in these engines, it usually comes off of like a paper that got published either by Epic or some other company. That then gets disseminated into some kind of prototype that then makes it into the engine and may or may not actually go anywhere. Like, say, for example, DFGI, which was very unfortunate. The other thing is that because people like 3D because it's just 3D and they don't actually like quality graphics, we have seen this big push towards screen space. And I'm absolutely positive I've talked about screen space before. Screen space is cancer. Like it's absolute cancer. And a lot of it started with FXAA. People just accepted that for some reason anti-aliasing filters can't work anymore, so let's blur the image instead. So FXAA became popular. NVIDIA popularized the prospect of blurring the image instead of anti-aliasing it. And then that evolved into TXAA, temporal anti-aliasing, which is absolute cancer. Now you have GPU-based culling, which is several frames behind. So you see lots of pop-in all over the place you really actually can't control as a developer. And now you have screen space reflections, which are gross. You have screen space ambient occlusion, which is gross. And a lot of the new lighting systems are actually being built with screen space as well, which is pretty gross. It's slow and it's inaccurate. And it's all there because people don't want to make a real engine. Meanwhile, deferred rendering engines are supposed to be about having lots of lights. That's supposed to be the main advantage that deferred rendering has over forward rendering. But in none of these engines does deferred perform well with a lot of lights on scene. Say, for example, like say StarCraft 2 just shits the bed when you have any more than like 3 or 4 lights on the screen. Much less shadow casting lights. And Unreal 4 is really not that much better, to be honest with you. Honestly, I don't notice hardly any performance difference between forward and deferred on a fairly old GPU in terms of lighting. Forward actually performs better. And CPU culling will perform better as well. And you don't deal with temporal anti-aliasing, all that other stuff. This is with using, I think it was MSAA, which used to be considered too expensive because it's a fairly demanding anti-aliasing process, but it looks good, it's sharp, and it performs quite well. At least in my case tests so far, and in all the research I've done to this point. But most people won't do that because in order to actually do what I'm doing, you actually have to change stuff in the source, and that's too scary for most people, even though it's like 1 or 2 lines. Most people don't like getting involved with actually figuring out how stuff works because it's not necessary. The big push to why things keep going down in quality, one of the reasons why is because the entry barrier is too low. Games are too cheap to make, not just in terms of money, but also time and skill. Because anybody can get into a game and be successful, like say, for example, Notch in Minecraft, and it literally takes no effort at all, everybody is constantly fishing for that because it's so low risk. When a company like Blizzard, blunders as bad as they have in the last couple decades, they continue to be incredibly successful, even though they have no right being successful because there is no one asking them to be successful. People will just suck up whatever the fuck. Now, there is a lot of people who won't do that. There is a lot of people who won't suck up whatever the fuck, but they're the minority because we've had that whole liberal movement that's really like dampened a lot of just like critical thinking in general. Everything is sort of really interrelated because that's the kind of education you're feeding people who are now becoming your next generation of primary spenders in the market. A lot of people who are older and have adult responsibilities are not going to spend $900 on a gacha game. A lot of people who are older and have adult responsibilities are not going to sink $90 into something riddled to fuck with DLC. Basically, the general theme is that if you're over the age of 20, you're probably not buying Blizzard products, you're probably not buying EA products. You're generally staying away from stuff like that because usually, unless you're being fed money from means other than you actually working for yourself in some manner, you're trying to be a little bit more conscious about how you're spending money, and the kind of returns you get out of modern software, it doesn't work for that. But all the younger generation, all the people that are being raised in this environment of everybody is successful, whether they try to be or not, means that they walk into the software actively resenting the very thought of critical thinking. And I mean, you see that all the time with the comments on your videos, even though there's only been a few that have been Fago2 screenshotted. We've seen enough conversation to know that the vast majority of people who get exposed to the video are both young, ignorant, and resistant to the very concept of critical thinking, which is not good. What that means is that in order to make the most amount of money with the least amount of money to be a successful business, that's what you market towards, is you fish for those kinds of people. You want their money. You're a business. What makes a successful business? You take their money. How do you take their money? How do you do this? You present a product that is flashy and can be easily apologized by these kinds of people, something that really doesn't encourage thinking. So that's why all the games today are shit. It's like a triple-edged sword. 3. Not only is it shit because the general skill level of the staff is very, very low, and usually people who are skilled are too expensive to bother hiring for a project that's just a throwaway, like something like Diablo 3 anyways. It's shit because it has to appeal to people with an extremely low, IQ, people who can't appreciate Rick and Morty, the Zoomers and Coomers and Koofers. And it also is shit because it was never intended to be a game to begin with. It's by nature, a dishonest product. So, you walk into something like StarCraft 2 or Diablo 3, you put on the hardest difficulty, all it does is change numbers. It's the same thing games have done for 30 years, even though the means, technology, skills, and wisdom to do better than that have existed for years and years and years. We don't take advantage of that because the whole goal was never to actually make a real product. It was to make something just to steal money. And it works very well. I mean, Blizzard is still very much in business. They're very successful, and they'll continue to be successful no matter how much they piss people off doing things like virtual signaling China and shit like that. No matter how much, a couple of neckbeards protest about China and free Hong Kong and all this other crap, they don't mean anything. They're not going to impact Blizzard's sales. Fucking stocks shift all over the place. I'm sure coronavirus is going to hit Blizzard harder than anything they've ever done to themselves, and it's not going to hit them at all. They're just going to bounce right back. They're going to continue to publish shovelware, and most people are just going to continue to gobble it up because that's what they've been raised as. They've never been raised with critical thinking. All the older people, all the people who have, either casuals or otherwise, who realize kind of what's going on, who open their eyes, they choose never to interact with this stuff because they know how futile it is.
So you think at this point it's just one of those situations where it'll take, I think we've actually talked about this exact idea before anyway, is that it will take a collapse of some sort regarding the industry, regarding whatever tech industry happens to be plagued by this phenomenon. It will take some sort of collapse in order for a revision or a reform to take place and be meaningful. Something that's bigger than just any one company, basically.
Yeah. In order for a revision, the whole fucking industry needs to collapse and be rebuilt from the ground up. And that's the only way that anything will ever improve. The gaming industry is dead and has been dead for quite a long time, but especially since 2010, when the whole apologism thing really started to take root. That was it. You just can't have good products in this kind of environment. If you want good games, you're either going to old stuff or you're finding developers who have distanced themselves. I mean, there was just a discussion the other day about people trying to pay modders. That's really gross.
Yeah.
That's the kind of environment you're in where people think that modders deserve money. It's really ugly. It's just a really ugly situation because most modders will bite that bait. And then that's the end of their project, right? That's the end of their lives as developers.
Yep, I am pretty flabbergasted at just even the idea of it, to be honest with you. Don't know how that even happens. But I guess it goes back to what you were talking about with regards to the whole root cause thing. Oh, speaking of cause, you found some birds.
Yeah, there's crows everywhere here. They love the trash. Canadians are very, very dirty. So there's lots and lots of crows, seagulls, and pigeons. A seagull is basically just a larger and more ornery crow.
Hey, that's rude. You can't call me that.
Yes, I can.
Don't you know a seagull is the username of an Overwatch League player?
People play Overwatch still? That's gross.
Yeah, they play it professionally.
You professionally wait for RNG and timers.
Dude, speaking of RNG, this is not really related to anything specifically. I'm sure we'll find a way to drag it back in at the end, but holy shit, I've been playing this game, Divinity Original Sin. I know you have some history with this game. How do you feel about Divinity Original Sin?
Divinity Original Sin has got to be one of the buggiest, most fucked up games I've ever played.
Is it up there with Magic?
It's one of the most poorly written games I've ever played too. Like it was basically written by Metzen and Lucas.
I just straight up skip all the dialogue because fuck that.
It's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a funny series if you like crashing because you dropped items and they corrupt the memory, or invisible things, or desyncing like crazy.
Yeah. What really gets me is we're playing local co-op, which I'm amazed that even runs at all, to be honest. But we're playing local co-op, and the game lags anytime a spider egg detonates to spawn a spider. And there was something. Oh yeah, just all the time. I don't know if this is a bug or if this is a feature that there's no documentation over or no tutorial about, no learning about. But a bunch of times characters just don't move, and it moves to them to say it's their turn, and then immediately moves to the next person.
Oh yeah. Their AI is actually shut down.
Well, this happens to my characters on my turn.
Maybe you're stunned or something.
No.
No idea then. Are you playing the enhanced edition? That one may be more buggy.
Enhanced with additional bugs, probably. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. We played the regular version. It was really bad. The enhanced edition, I think, made it slightly more balanced, allegedly. But I honestly wouldn't believe it because, I mean, if the first game shipped as bad as it is, I'm much more liable to believe that the enhanced edition has a lot more bugs in it.
The biggest problem that I have with that game is one that we've just found out recently. There's an area which you may have already. Did you complete the entire game?
Yeah, we completed it a while ago. I don't remember too much of it, honestly. It's very forgettable.
Well, there's an area where there's like a storm that's slowing you down. That's also the area where the spiders are. That's where we just stopped at the time of this recording. And that means that you have no AP. Like, you have no action points to actually spend.
Oh, yeah.
And you're supposed to fight this like giant spider who spawns other spiders.
Are you playing on a higher difficulty?
I think so.
Because the only way for us to proceed after the first major town, like in order to fight the zombies and stuff like that, we had to use a barrel that does over 500 damage a hit when you bump things with it. And we went through like the entire game doing that until we broke, since the game uses like lure or something like that and not really programming, a boss spawns as a part of a quest way later on in the game. It's like a rat king. And he's supposed to go hostile to you. He stepped on poison or something like that, so he should have been hostile, but because I clicked on him and initiated a conversation with him, it tripped the script to make him hostile, but he was an ally to us. So he spawned a bunch of cats that are supposed to die, like they're temporary summons, but they didn't die. So we just teleported the cats across the world space and had them fight things for us because they had like insane amounts of damage, health, and stun things on hit. So we would just buff them with shields and have them kill everything for us and then bump everything else with the barrel. Anytime we encountered something that the barrel could not deal damage to, like it was just bugged in some maps for inexplicable reasons, then we had a lot of problems again because most of the stuff in the game, like we had like insane gear and stats and stuff like that, but most stuff was still just like flat out just one shot us if it ever got close to us.
Yeah.
So you basically had to play through the game doing this kind of stupid shit.
Well, that's the biggest problem for me is like there's just it's not related to the strategy that you're employing, which is what should be happening in a strategy game. Or a strategical role-playing game or whatever the fuck is happening here.
Oh, yeah, there's no strategy at all. Create poison, create fire, you're done.
Yeah, well, that's a way to do it without dealing with fucking RNG, I guess. But like our party is just full of people who have stuns and freezes and electrocutes and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But if they don't land, we just die immediately, basically.
Yeah.
So like you're just at the will of RNG, which is such a demoralizing aspect of the entire process. Like, why would I even want to play?
It's a terrible game. It's an absolute disaster. And the performance of that engine is so fucking horrible too. Like it was baffling how bad that game performed, considering it looks like absolute shit.
It does not look very good whatsoever. And on top of that, not only does it perform poorly, but half of the time the AI will do nothing. Well, not half of the time. I wish it was half of the time.
Oh, yeah. The final boss, this big dragon, is not immune to blind. So a lot of the times when enemies will not do anything, it's because they're standing in some smoke from a fireball or something like that, and they're blind.
Right, yeah.
So they will just skip their turn, and that's how we killed the last boss. Because we couldn't use a barrel on him, or we didn't bother to. I just like dropped fire on him, and he just sat there and just skipped most of his turns as we just killed him.
I don't think the skipping turn thing happens anymore, but what will happen is if they're stuck on an object or behind another person, they will basically just hold the game hostage for 30 seconds to up to a minute, maybe
Up to 10 minutes sometimes.
Oh, okay. Well, for us, it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
we've
had them and just sat there for a really long time.
Yeah, it is.
Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's Lua, not like actually programmed. So
yeah,
it's very slow. Like Lua is one of those brilliant things. Like we were just talking about stuff that you know, shit gets worse the further you go. Well, JavaScript and Lua and stuff like that are really bad. See, Lua can have like critical failures that basically break the entire game, but it will not actually crash the game. So of course, in modern software, there is no error reporting. So, you know, you can have some kind of catastrophic shit that just starts this wildcat of fuck inside the game from a Lua error, and you won't even know it as a player other than stuff either getting progressively slower and slower or just a lot of shit breaking.
Yeah, it's like a memory leak in a program that you're running, like Photoshop, except in your game. So that's epic.
So, you know, the AI can just like have some massive low-level failure that breaks everything, and you don't know. Because Lua was built for people who are too lazy to program. So we'll just sweep all these errors and stuff under the rug. Yeah, generally with a program, if something fails, it should fail as noisily as possible. But
well, no, because they don't.
Not in modern games.
It's almost like these games are built with the assumption that they're going to ship with 1 billion bugs. I mean, people buy games with the assumption that that's going to happen too, and it's so ingrained in people's heads at this point to expect that I've seen posts that are like, "I've bought this game, I pre-ordered this game, but I'm going to wait to play it until a few patches." Or something. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? So that happens. That's insane apologism, but
that's lunacy.
Beyond that, you still have the problem of like, just looking at these games and how they are designed and how they are put together. It's the developers themselves they want to obfuscate errors where possible, just so that they don't have to deal with them. Like, that's what it seems like. So they want to make the errors
don't have
as
the skill
hidden
to
as
deal
possible.
with them.
Because if they make them noisy, like you're just suggesting, which would be best practice so that they can fix them when they do appear, then they would be obligated to repair the issue. And maybe it's like one extra line or something to print a debug message.
Fixing bugs doesn't sound pretty on your resume. Is adding features. So most developers will just be like, "Oh, it's horribly buggy. Well, hey, did you know we added hats and horse armor?"
Don't say horse armor.
Horse armor.
Don't say horse marmalade.
Horse marmalade.
So
I mean, that's one of the core problems. Is like this is like not just at like the developer to user level, but also inside the developer. You know, all these companies are so horribly mismanaged, where their leadership and stuff like that doesn't keep track of them. So these people try to hold their jobs, and that's why the user interface for everything like shuffles around randomly rather than, you know, anything happens. YouTube. Because I mean, it's been feature complete for fucking ever, but people want to keep getting paid easy money. So they're like, hey, you know, if I shuffle around all these numbers, these imaginary metrics will say that, you know, it'll result in more user engagement, and they just throw in some like big words. I still remember, I think it was again Lucid Iguana. That guy was really just a fucking like fountain of stupidity. He said something like achievements are good because the metrics say they're good. Like, I mean, you can't even use metrics for that because games just force achievements on you whether you want them or not. Oh yeah, that's been another thing that we've tracked is like beating the first boss in the game gives you an achievement that less than 8% of players have completed or something. Yeah.
Like, no. Oh, okay. Nice. It's like, what kind of person buys a game for $40 or $60 or whatever this game's cost you originally was, and then doesn't actually play it? Like,
a lot of people apparently
they refunded and got their money back, but
no, they don't. They never do. Yeah. Like, I'm on Discord, which is Motendu's Discord. He makes gacha video. Well, he used to make gacha videos and stuff like that. But
what's he doing now? Not making gacha videos?
I actually don't know what he does now. I think that like Billy Harrington's death hit him pretty hard because he did actually like sort of know him, so he kind of like stopped making gacha videos. But
Is that
He
a
still
gacha
does
featurette or something?
something.
Was that guy
No.
an actor?
No, he was a mad maker. He made mads, the videos, the compilations, and the edited ones.
Oh, okay.
Like the ones I sometimes link in the server. But I honestly don't know what he does today. But anyways, a lot of the users on his server, listening to them talk about, oh, I have all these games I need to play, and I'm always fucking scratching my head wondering, why the fuck do you own so much stuff that you're not even doing anything with? Like, why didn't you just wait to buy it until it's like on fucking sale or something?
Yeah, or
So
until
most
you
of the
want
stuff was
to
like
play
fucking
it.
pre-ordered. Like, it doesn't make any fucking sense. And a lot of these, like, a lot of people just don't think. They don't think about purchasing. It's just, I have money. It's burning a hole in my pocket. I've got to spend it.
Yeah.
Like, nobody has any sense of fucking self-control whatsoever. And a lot of the people, after they end up playing something, it turns out they didn't really care for it at all. You know, I also see that comment. I mentioned it a few times. It's like, I feel like I'm getting too old for games. I'm just not enjoying them anymore. But they don't realize that, you know, it's just that games have gotten shittier. It has nothing to do with how old you are.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Is like the good old days are often pioneered or regaled as like, oh, it was so much better back then, and like half of the
people will be
population.
like, oh, you're
that
looking
listen
through
to them-
rose tinted glasses,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it really is a real thing, though.
No, yeah.
Like, it's very real.
It's because half of the people are just like, oh, look at this boomer guy just fucking pretending that it used to be better back in the day. Because there is a fair counterpoint to that, but it's regarding people who are not talking from a position of authority when they experience something. It's talking about like the general idea of, oh yeah, this is back in the day it was great because of XYZ reason, and in fact it was just because you are not an old fuck now, or back then you weren't not an old fuck, and now you are, and now you're fucked. Like that's an old Doug Stanhope bit. He's a comedian, and he tells that joke, and it actually has some ring of truth to it. But when it comes to this sort of thing where you're talking about tech, like, it's a very real phenomenon, and I'm just always puzzled by it.
Yeah, it's like people. Oh, I had it on the tip of my fucking tongue, and I don't fucking remember it. God damn it!
Lewd.
But Jesus Christ.
Canadian.
Oh, I had it on my. I'm too fucking tired. Like, the thing is that when people were trying to make stuff initially, when they're trying to break into it, they usually are trying to break into it because they wanted to. But now that anybody can make games, literally anybody, it's just another avenue to make a quick buck off of, especially since it's such a young industry. There's no form of quality control whatsoever. There's no desire for quality control. So the people developing are just like, well, why would I put effort in trying to have quality control? I just run in and make some money. And since I don't have to invest hardly any time into it, you know, it's just not something that I really need to worry about. Fucking WebP, you pieces of shit! Stop using this crap!
Pranked.
God fucking damn it, you fucking Mongoloid asshole pieces of shit. Fucking piss in your mouth. So, this is one of the reasons why I really hate unions too, because anything that empowers people who don't have skills to do something, even if it has other benefits associated with it, it's not good. Nothing should ever empower people who don't belong somewhere to start accomplishing and achieving things in it at all. Like voice actors, for example. If you're not a good voice actor, you shouldn't be being paid for it. This is the plain and simple truth. You just should not be being paid for something you can't do. It's a fucking disaster. The whole fucking... What am I looking at? Why am I... Were these ever completed?
Mesk is finding images on the internet.
Yeah, I am actually. I'm hunting for higher resolution art, and I'm going through fucking like Ching Chong China websites. I might get coronavirus if I die.
Yes, you might get it
with
if you
my
die.
dildo collection. I wish these were. Do you think I probably can't color those? I'm not that good. But,
you can do it.
No, I can't. I'm Canadian.
Oh, that's
You
true.
don't understand.
I
I'm
didn't
not even
consider
really
that.
human. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's like the very like pursuit of quality is just non-existent. Like people just don't want to try anymore because it isn't necessary. If you give people an easy way out, especially when it's something that you're being monetarily compensated for, the gut reflex will always be to take that easy way out. People don't want to put effort into things. People are very fucking lazy. And yes, pretty much all developers are lazy. It's human nature to be lazy. And laziness
Hey,
isn't
I
even
heard
necessarily a
developers
bad
can't be
thing.
lazy though.
Well, that's wrong. The product kind of speaks for itself in that case. You should really play StarCraft 2 or Diablo 3 if you think that developer can't be lazy.
Well, the author of that
Because
quote
it'll
is a
open your
developer
eyes.
in StarCraft 2. So
It'll open your third eye. Just don't lose your carrots inside of it.
carrots, more like Carax.
Yeah. What?
Carax. From StarCraft 2, Legacy of the Void. The
Oh.
Treebeard character with the Overwatch fidget spinner armor.
Oh my god. Why does that guy even fucking exist?
I actually don't know. He doesn't pander to any demographic besides the fat furry demographic. Well, I guess we found our answer.
I guess he must be Metzen's other self-insert.
Talk about insert.
Oh, lewd. I got led to a Facebook post.
I'm sorry for your loss.
I feel kind of grossed out. It's kind of squicky, Oh dear. Yeah, games are fucking depressing. Like, the Gamergate thing was also really depressing too, because there was this big push for more, honesty in journalism and other sort of places like that, and they managed to kind of twist that around. But it still exposed like the massive toxicity of that entire circle and like delegitimized all related aspects of it. But now they are so fucking butthurt about it. Like, they are still butthurt about Gamergate to this very day.
Yeah, it's like their Vietnam War or something. It's really bizarre watching a lot of check marks say it, though.
They have like these emotional scars from being called out of being pieces of shit. Like, the fact that these kind of people are humored at all, the fact they're not just like banned from Twitter immediately, or any other resource, much less the fact that they're given any kind of association with game developers at all. Like, it just shows how massively entrenched the whole concept of misinformation really is in the industry. That's why the whole thing needs to be burned down. All these people need to be expelled or held liable and litigated for, misinformation, consumer trust issues and stuff like that. False advertising and things like that. I'm sure you could strike a lot of companies with this if you could, find a reasonable place to try them in. But that's the other thing too, is that even if you could actually try companies and other stuff for things like, always online and DRM and stuff like that, like, where are you going to try them? Like, what courts are actually educated enough in this material to actually responsibly handle these kinds of cases? There's nothing. There's no one anywhere in any position of power that's actually like formally educated in this stuff, because the only people who are actually educated in this stuff are the people who are running the scams, or the few people who are, aware of what's going on and stay far clear of it. But you can't, like, even if you're aware of it, you don't necessarily have the power to actually do anything about it. For one, there's no point in trying to convince people to spend their money more intelligently. There's nothing you can do to the actual people running the scams. There's really just nothing you can do at all. Like, the fact that Blizzard and other companies like them are still in business just shows you just how far down the rabbit hole we've gone, where you literally can just ride on your name for over 20 years doing absolutely nothing of any value whatsoever. And although a lot of people will call you out on it, they won't actually do anything about it. And they can't influence anybody else at all. So you're just going to continue to make more and more and more money, to the point that you become like those guys at BlizzCon that you are literally living in a fucking fantasy world where you think that people will buy literally anything. And then you start even stepping on the people who are like following the leader. Like you accidentally inverse into the sheep flock and start running over sheep with your lawnmower. That's basically what happened when they said, don't you all own phones? Is they accidentally sheared some of their own sheep with a wood chipper. And they were like, oops, sorry about that. It's okay. We're a good company. Here, have Diablo 4. It's just Diablo 3, but with more specularity. And now everybody's sucking their cock again. Like, it would be comedic if it wasn't so depressing, because I think that, you know, with the kind of money Blizzard has, it's not impossible for them to make a good game. It's just they're never going to, because nobody wants them to make a good game.
That does seem to be the common denominator at this point. The idea that the demand isn't there because the education isn't there, and the education isn't there because, well, actually, that's the grand conspiracy, I guess. But since the education isn't there, the demand isn't there. Since the demand isn't there, the products aren't there. Since the products aren't there,
education isn't even really that hard for a lot of this stuff. Yeah, the technical stuff could be difficult to get, but like making a good game, all that just requires is common sense.
Well, no, I mostly meant the critical thinking.
The only thing you need for common sense is to just not go to California.
I mostly was talking about the actual consumer in the case of the education thing. That's where you're really lacking a lot of it, because like you said, there's not really much of a point to telling people to it's akin to forcing a horse to water, to, you know, in order to make it drink. You can lead them there, you can show them the way, you can let them know, here's an idea, why don't you walk down that road and drink from that fucking fountain, idiot. But instead they'll just drown, like that other Doug Stanhope bit. So that's basically where you're
It's also an issue because, you know, like I said, this is one of the big reasons is it's all these younger people. They don't have any context for what equates to well-spent money either. Because, again, they weren't around for when products were actually at least fairly reasonable. They don't understand how valuable $90 actually is in terms of entertainment. And my general rule of thumb is a $90 game better give me about 6,000 hours worth of entertainment, you know, because Brood War gave me a lot more than that, and Brood War was a lot cheaper than that, and, you know, again, a newer game may be more advanced, so, you know, it could be a little bit more expensive, but it has to give me the equivalent to the amount of entertainment, and if it doesn't, it's not worth the money. So, you know, you can think about, where does that 6,000 hours come from? It's only 6,000 hours because I'm talking about the vanilla game. This is before, you know, anything I have done with it, like mapping or modding or otherwise. If I put in that much time, then obviously we go into the tens of thousands of hours. But just the game itself, 6,000 hours is not too hard to ask of the average game. So where would 6,000 hours go? Meow? 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 Meow.
We can only hear you, so that's pretty hilarious.
He's all the way across the house, but yeah, he's meowing loudly. So 6,000 hours. What other games have comparatively put in 6,000 hours? Close to it, Diablo 2 Classic. I mean, I would say like World of Warcraft, but that's its own fucking... That's a really deep rabbit hole that we could be here for hours if I really got into how that works. But, I mean, Lineage 2, I had a lot of time in that too, not 6,000 hours. But, I mean, we talk about like the few games, but you know, it's still like older titles. Like even like World of Warcraft is still an older title. And it's always like something that you end up having a lot to do. And like, obviously in StarCraft, Brood War, you had everything from the original game and the map editor and the campaigns, however bad they are, you know, but you also had the skirmish with the AI and stuff like that. And I know you mentioned the skirmish in the chat before this, that you probably have something you wanted to mention. So I may as well bring that up as well. The extreme vast majority of that 6,000 hours is actually in AI-only skirmishes. And that's why I knew as much about AI as I did, is because it was testing, playing. And 6,000 hours, I'm probably actually selling it really short. Like, it's probably closer to like 20,000 hours. And I'm not even really exaggerating, because that's literally what I did for a long time, because I was on a compact with a 100 megahertz MSARX 2, and there really wasn't too much I could play on that. Like, natural selection didn't work. Counter-Strike really didn't like to work. Warcraft 3 was like 1 frame every 20 seconds. So I played a lot of StarCraft, and I was on that system for quite a long time. I moved on to that Athlon 1700 or something like that, and that was still StarCraft. Lots and lots and lots and lots of StarCraft. And I mean, I was modding very early in at like 1999, but it was still like it took me a while to really settle in on only mods. And then even after that, I still followed the professional scene quite a long time too. So that also constitutes for that. That's still the game. That's still exposure and interaction with the game. So I count that as well. And that's just like the replayability. Like another title I think that I put a lot of time into was actually Perfect Dark. And another title similar to that would have been Time Splitters 2 and then Time Splitters 3. And all of these games, you'll notice all these games have lots of single-player content that isn't just a linear campaign. Perfect Dark and Time Splitters are basically the same game. They both have a skirmish mode. And they both have skirmish mode-related unlockable stuff in them that you can pursue that tend to be fairly skill testing. And then, they have bots and stuff like that that you can customize. Like, as an example, in, Time Splitters and stuff like that, you can unlock your character skins. You can unlock maps. It actually comes with a map editor too, believe it or not. Not a very good one, but it has one. So you can set up a map with you can change all the weapon spawns. You can change the teams, what characters compose their teams, their general skill level, stuff like that. The music to play as the map, objective type like King of the Hill, capture the flag, stuff like that. And Perfect Dark was the same way. And, just between that with the AI, I literally did have thousands of hours of entertainment out of that. But now, I think what really hit me with shooters in particular, that they weren't going to support this kind of stuff anymore, was Battlefield 2. Where Battlefield 2 had AI, but it was only for the smallest maps. They didn't support anything past the smallest maps. So that was like one of the biggest letdowns I had ever seen at that point. Like, that was like one of my biggest awakenings was, wow, people want shooters to die because they're actually regressing in features from a fucking N64 title. And shooters just got worse and worse and worse. Only the Unreal series really stuck to that. Although Killzone actually does have some skirmish stuff in it, Killzone plays like absolute shit, and it's really unpleasant to play because of their movement system, so I can't really compare that at all. But, like, when I looked at a shooter, like, that's why I stopped buying shooters, right? Because they didn't have the features that Perfect Dark did. And Perfect Dark, in many respects, isn't even that great of a game. The single-player campaign is an absolute goddamn disaster. And, it performs really badly and stuff like that. And the graphics and stuff like that didn't really age very well. But at the time, it was a very good title. So you would expect that every shooter afterwards, like, say, for example, the Time Splitters series, would at least have feature parity, if not improve from it. But Time Splitters was the last time we would ever actually see feature parity with that game, at least until we get into, like, Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike is really, like, the only other thing that really is within the same area. Unreal Tournament, Counter-Strike, and stuff like that. But, yeah, those are like old titles, like really old titles. And again, we look back to those old titles, Quake 3 Arena, the first like major shooters, Unreal Tournament and Counter-Strike, stuff like that. And then we just regressed from there. Now look at Overweight. You have to have an always online connection to even do anything with Overweight before you even think about how bad the actual game is, because it's fucking terrible. You have to always be on the internet, and that's just pointless. Like that's just DRM straight up, but it's also pointless. And I think they added like a practice mode at some point for versus AI, but it's not something that normally existed. It certainly doesn't have anywhere near the customization that Perfect Dark had, and it doesn't play as well as Perfect Dark. It's an inferior title through and through. And what is competition for Overweight today? Counter-Strike Go, and I guess Team Fortress 2. And
hey, don't forget Valorant.
Valor who?
Yeah, it's Riot's FPS.
Oh, isn't that a joke? That was an April Fool's, wasn't it? Like an outdated April Fool's joke?
No, they also ship with Ring Zero, basically a root kit disguised as an anti-cheat.
Oh, you mean Riot's using Denuvo?
No. They have their own stuff that has no documentation on it whatsoever, so it's even less trustworthy.
Oh, wow, that's fucking brilliant. Why do people post shit in your fucking locker room bouncer boy thing without... Like, I always see deleted stuff in there. Is it you deleting them or someone else?
Oh, what? Oh, no, that's because some guy... Yeah, well, sometimes they join and then they do nothing, so I kick them and delete the join message. But yeah, a lot of the time you'll see... if you catch them at the right time, you'll see people not fill out 4 questions and instead just say a bunch of weird shit.
Yeah. I actually see that it reminds... I'm sure I mentioned this before. It reminds me of another thing I'm on that has a similar thing. You have to ping the forum... Or the owner and tell her why you're there, and people will not do that, and they can't view anything until they do that. Like, you have access to the channels, but you can't view them. So they will just get like berated endlessly until the end of Rage Quitting. This happens a lot.
I don't understand what they're doing. Like, are they just here to data mine the user list or something? Is this
there is actually bots. There is bots that can join servers and scrape the user list, and then I forget. I know that before they could actually access your account. Like, there isn't, like, I mean, it's Chrome. It's full of fucking security holes. There's probably a lot of shit that we don't even know about. But
yeah,
I know that before, that if these bots joined your server and scraped your user list, every single account could actually be compromised in the user list. I know that there's a lot of bots that do scrape servers now. I don't know if they're as dangerous, but they do it still. But I also think in a large part it's just people who are fucking stupid.
Yeah, that's where I'm going with it. I don't understand why, but they are fucking stupid. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. So
yeah, we were talking about skirmish.
On
we were
the
talking
subject
about
of
co-op versus AI, unless you had some other segue.
Co-op versus AI. You were gonna say something about that.
Oh yeah, but you were about to say something.
No, I was just gonna say that it's fucking astonishing that shooters have gone so far down the hole.
Yeah.
When they're literally the easiest genre that we had actually good examples to go by in the past about how to make different shooters. You wanted like a story-based shooter, you've got Doom. You want like an arena shooter, you've got Quake 3 Arena, UT99. You know, you want some sort of mix of that, you've got like Perfect Dark Time Splitters. Like, you really just can't go wrong just copying those and then maybe tweaking your guns, maps, and characters as you want. But somehow shooters have just become a fucking joke instead.
Well, I guess it's
Lock
very
and
similar.
cover.
Don't say that. I guess it's very similar
Regenerating
to
health.
Shit, man. It's over. It's very similar to the RTS genre, to be honest. Games have always regressed in features. I remember I was reading a Game Informer back in like 2008. It was an old magazine for video games. And 2008 is probably not the actual year I was reading this, but it was a long time ago. And I remember reading that they were negatively reviewing a game because it was an expansion pack to a game, and it actually removed features from the base game. And they said expansion packs should never remove features of the base game. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a pretty obvious. Like I think they were trying to make it like a joke. Like, can you like obviously it's in the fucking name, expansion pack. Hello, you're supposed to be adding stuff, expanding stuff, not removing it. And this is back in like the heyday of DLC and like downloadable map packs and shit for like Gears of War and Halo and stuff. So it probably actually was 2007, 2008 because that's when Halo 3 was out, and that's when around the time that I was realizing how shitty and scummy DLC actually was. But yeah, it's amazing to me that that's like a real thing. Like not only sequels or expansion packs or whatever, but just in general, like the fact that the genre is that bad.
Yeah.
What the fuck happened here, man?
RTS is a sad state of affairs.
Now, it doesn't help, though, that like here's a sort of preface before we dive into the topic of skirmish or whatever. Of course, it took us an hour to get here, by the way. But a little bit of a way to give an explanation for what we're talking about when it comes to this sort of thing. Like, one of the reasons why we even have conversations about crazy ass shit from Fagudo screenshots is that basically Fagudo is acting as like a replacement for social media in that he's taking these insane, uninformed takes from insane, uninformed people and just spreading them into our community. And they're good for a sensible chuckle and not much else. So at least in this particular case, it made me think, oh, maybe I should actually have a conversation with Mesk about this idea. But most of the time, it's just disastrous. And social media is basically a mind virus in that, unlike the coronavirus, you can't ever get cured from it unless you excise it, like a sort of like a tumor. I guess it's like a mind cancer might be a better way to describe it, because it actually makes you think that like people in general are like what they are on social media, and then you take a walk and you're like, oh wait, no, that's not true. But the more you stay on those places, the more you read those fucking hot takes from those Twitter leftists and I don't know, whatever else, Facebook posts from your aunt about conspiracy theories and how aliens seeded this planet with life. All that shit, man. You don't want to deal with that. So the more you do that, the less of a grasp on reality you have, or the less realistic your view of human people is anyway. So what I'm getting
Chris
at here... Oh, yeah.
Storvik.
Hey, you can't say his last name. That's doxing.
It's on his fucking Google spreadsheet he wants everybody to see.
No, if you say it, it's doxing. If he says it, it's fine.
Yeah, feel free to come to my door and say that, fuckers.
Well, the KGB
I'll
wanted
dox
to shake
you
your
and
hand.
your dog.
Oh, fuck. Not the dog. Dog dox.
Yeah, the dog. What you gonna do about it?
I'm going to write an angry post on the Campaign Creations forums.
But it's like you're talking about people who are far detached from reality. And the first thing I thought is that fucking guy.
Well, you did name yourself after him.
Yes, I did, for that very reason, because he's so far detached from reality. But it's like, this is a guy where he literally lost his shit. And now everybody is dead to him because he think they may have at some point supported Trump. And you know what? It's not the first time I've heard of that. I've heard of that many times.
He complimented you. He called you an American.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice that he thinks I'm a higher form of life than I really am, but he's also wrong.
What a fucking
okay, I actually gotta run that. Yeah, okay, really quick. I just wanted to interject that really fast.
Oh, okay, bye.
So I'll be back in a second.
And we're back. Thanks for watching that advertisement and supporting me on Patreon and Coffee.
See me at Instagram and MySpace. Okay, you were saying something. I had to run AFK for literally no reason.
Oh, what was the reason? Oh,
it was just nothing. Literally nothing. Just like, oh, there's a cat. Yes, I know. Bye.
Imagine you being informed that there is a cat.
Yeah. So anyways, you were saying.
Yeah, I was saying something about something. Oh yeah, I was just talking about mind viruses. All right, so we established the point, right? That's like the sort of precursor to this whole conversation, is that basically
social media is gay.
Yeah, it allows people to assume that they have some reason to communicate an idea without necessarily the idea itself justifying. It's kind of like a different case of the same thing that that Andrea Rosa person has with their projects or whatever. They think that's like, oh yeah, it's worth
delirium.
No. It's the idea that it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to take this product and it's definitely worth other people playing and giving feedback on. Even though I haven't really done any of that stuff myself, like I can't even beat my own maps or whatever, so on and so forth. So like in that sense, I think it's very similar because the basic idea is that these people haven't considered what points or ideas they're trying to communicate fully. Otherwise, they wouldn't have those points or ideas. That's kind of the subtext there. And because of that, or in spite of that, they feel empowered, or like they should, they feel like it is their purpose to spread these ideas. And it doesn't make any sense. Like if you look at the comments in any YouTube video that has actual comments, you look at the replies to any tweet from
they didn't get auto deleted because they're critical of China.
Oh yeah, you can't do that. You also can't mention the C virus.
The cock virus, another blow against the male race.
Yeah, I know. So there's all sorts of different shit that you've got to watch out for, basically. And I feel like a lot of it is because of the fact that we're so interconnected. Like we've lost some grasp on like what ideas are worth sharing, basically. And the way that I would like people to think about it is sort of like some people have called it like the bar test, I think, before. It's like, if you were at the bar with your friends, would you say this? But just in general, like if you were in any capacity in real life, would you share an idea that you have in the same way, even if it's the same idea? Would you share it in the same way that you share it on fucking social media or Discord messages, where you're just like completely dismissing other people's points of view and otherwise just like horrendously attacking people, like just flinging shit, basically? But and then when confronted about it, would you respond in the same way that you do on social media? Like, odds are probably not. You would never get to any
it's
of
very
these places.
common on American and Canadian college campuses, actually.
Oh, well, that's just the real life version of Twitter, so I guess that would make sense.
Yeah, I guess you get the same educational quality you do in those facilities as you would on Twitter.
Yeah. But I actually have no firsthand experience there. I only went to a community college, and the one time
I have heard tales.
I actually,
including that one about the that I told you guys about that TA or something like that, who was scolded for talking about critical thinking or something like that.
Yeah, that was a famous case because she showed a Jordan Peterson clip, and people were like, "Don't you know he's like Hitler?" Well, actually, they compared him first to Milo Yiannopoulos, who's just like a gay provocateur guy. I say gay first, not because I'm biased and prejudiced and homophobic, but actually because that's how he would describe himself. He would describe himself as gay first because that's how gay he is. Anyway, that guy's gay, and he also says a lot of incendiary things just to piss women off. So he's pretty cool, based and red pilled, but.
Based and gay pilled.
They compare him, or Jordan Peterson, to Milo Yiannopoulos, and then they're like, "Oh, and also like Hitler." It's like, it's like a gay guy is like Hitler. I don't understand. Like, how do you compare the first two, then the second two, and then the first and the third, and why are there only three? But whatever. So
three.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to make that point because I think it's actually really important. I feel like generally people would not share the same stupid, ill-informed opinions in the same contexts. They would share them in very different ways, and they would probably be a lot more
Twitter
open.
makes it too easy to do so.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is ease of access. Like before, even if you were sharing your stupid ass opinions, you weren't doing so on the internet where you can reach like millions of people potentially. And you also wouldn't even have the idea in your head that, oh, maybe I could reach millions of people, because obviously that doesn't happen statistically very often. But because people know that has happened now, that's like something that in the back of their head, they're thinking, oh yeah, maybe that'll happen. Maybe this will go viral and take off, or maybe people will screenshot
for that.
Yeah. So basically the point we're reacting to, or the point that I'm levying for discussion here, the Faguto screenshot in question is, I don't even remember the guy's name. I think it was like Spartan or something, but he was...
It's Faguto.
No.
Faggoto is how I pronounce it, by the way.
Yeah. I think that's too rude, but sometimes I do call him Faggy instead of Faguto, so.
I thought it was supposed to be a Faggoto. I thought that was the entire point of his name, was to be like tongue-in-cheek like that.
I wouldn't be able to tell you, man.
Maybe he's Milo.
Oh, he could be. Well, he at some point he said he changed his name to Fagmon on this server just to see if he would get banned. And that was like really
I remember that.
That was pretty psychotic. So he's known as
welcome
Garuto
to even more
in
open
other servers
arms,
because other servers will ban him for Faguto. He's got to be stealthy about it. It's pretty psychotic. Anyway, he screenshotted some fucking Spartan warrior from the year 300 and gave who gave a sermon about how AI are not meant to be fair, and AI's the challenge of AI. So basically, it's like skirmish mode is useless because if the AI are not strong enough to compete with players who want to play multiplayer, then players who want to play multiplayer won't play skirmish. They'll just play other environments. They'll play multiplayer itself. Players who want to play against AI will be they'll be too good for the AI, or they'll be too bad, so they'll just die. And Otherwise, so basically in his mind, only 3 different kinds of AI can exist because 3. There's the too good, too bad, and too inhuman. And the too inhuman one is like the AI from Alpha Star and Google and shit that only really works in StarCraft 2 anyway. So obviously, this is all like a huge poisoned well. I think the entire thing is just a flawed concept from the get-go because it assumes that there's only 3 different options, and it also assumes that there's no gradations that can be useful, and it assumes that there's virtually no edge cases where anybody would find any of those potentially useful or interesting or compelling to play against. But it also comes from the very basis of like a foundational point about not wanting to improve. And I just made a whole by design video earlier this week specifically about self-improvement and productivity and being consistent and all that. And it goes into that quite a bit in depth. So I won't labor the points here or repeat them here, but the core concept of it is that like you basically need to be doing everything for the purpose of improving. And in order to do that, you need critical thinking, and you need to be able to be retrospective or introspective rather. You need to be able to understand where you went wrong and what you did that was good and bad and where you can improve next time. So you need to be able to analyze stuff. You need to be able to think critically about things, and you need to be able to think that in a way that isn't going to get sort of overshadowed by emotional responses or depression or a complete lack of motivation or whatever. So there's like a bunch of different things that feed into that. Obviously, it's a very complex issue. It's not quite as granular as we would like it to be. Otherwise, it would be a lot easier to understand. But since it just like his entire post is like, oh yeah, we've got no hi.
Did you hear me at all?
No.
You didn't. When did I last talk?
I don't know. I was still talking about the screenshot. You got discussed.
I must have gotten discussed a while ago because I said something and then I had to go AFK. Oh. And then I came back.
Hi.
You weren't saying anything, but my thing didn't say I was DC'd, so...
Yeah.
Thanks, fucking Ripcord and Discord. You guys are working together to really just clap my cheeks today.
Well, the gist of it was that the guy basically said that there were 3 different kinds of AI that you can have. Too good, too bad, or too inhuman. Too inhuman referring to AI like Alpha Star that's not actually AI. Or not the AI that we would conceive of as
what
enemy
guy?
Opponents. So you either have...
I feel like I missed a lot of whatever you were talking about.
I'm talking about the screenshot. The whole point of Skirmish.
Where's the screenshot?
Oh, I don't actually have it on me. That's in Mark Time Strategy somewhere. I'm just saying the points levied at what made me think of this topic to begin with, the whole Skirmish AI or Skirmish in general, and the validity of it, or the...
Oh, I think I see it. It's the... Turtling versus Skirmish AI is how I traditionally enjoyed RTS.
Yeah, it's not that guy, though. That's somebody else.
No smart AI needed. There is no smart AI in existence.
You.
By that nature, AI, like... there's only 2 kinds of AI. There's an AI that is an AI, and there's an AI that tries not to be an AI and doesn't even accomplish what an AI can accomplish. Like, if I want to play against human-like player, I play against humans. See, that's a very simple thing, but it makes sense. That's the RTS experience of many people in late 1990s, which can partially explain the decline of RTS in popularity, because more and more games and other genres started to offer a better PvE experience than that. No, they fucking didn't! TBS 4 times and grand strategy games all offer a much better PvE experience. No, they don't! Go play fucking Civilization 5 and 6 and tell me the AI is any fucking good. Go play fucking Sins of a Solar Empire and tell me that AI is any fucking good. It isn't. I mean, the games are shit, yes, but the AI doesn't do fuck all. You literally can just park all your shit on top of things in Civ 5, declare war in the game. The fuckers are all abusable in diplomacy alone before you even go into their awful actual combat handling. Like, there is no AI in any of these games. Okay, go ahead. I'm just mad at the internet.
So the first screenshot is what we're reacting to anyway here. It's the very first one where he pinged me.
Oh, is there one right above that?
It's called cakewuck.png.
Why not play MP?
Yeah, that's a different one. That's when he was responding to Fagudo.
You don't need neural network.
That's Fagudo laughing at him. Just look at cakewuck.png. It's above that. Basically, the
If an
main
AI is as good as a decent human opponent without cheating, it'll probably only be beatable by people who play multiplayer.
yeah.
No? Like, that guy doesn't even understand the entire fucking point of what he's even talking about. Cake wuck. I definitely care if an AI has more resources or PopCap, especially in skirmish. Okay, that makes sense. In campaign, it's fine if it's narratively justified. Okay. Specifically talking about campaigns or other game modes. I think skirmish against the AI is the least fun aspect of an RTS game. Well, that's going to need some context as to why he thinks that. And I don't think there is much one can do to make it more interesting. Well, that's just an uneducated opinion. Thank God is wrong. A decent AI is nice, but no AI can realistically provide an engaging challenge to a human opponent for a long time. Well, that's going to also depend on context. If we're talking about a linear map, sure, that's true. As a general statement, nope, you're wrong. Either it'll be a cakewalk for any human opponent who knows the game, or it'll cheat like crazy and thus require a specific kind of strategy to beat, which will get boring really fast. I guess this guy doesn't actually play games very much because, yeah, you can make a decent AI that will challenge at least like high level.
Listen,
like
his
maybe not like
portrait's
professional
Jim
level
Raynor
players,
from
but...
StarCraft 2, okay? He's played plenty of RTS
why
games.
did you point that out? No wonder why he thinks that shit. He plays fucking StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
You haven't even played a game with an AI in it.
Uh-huh. Now we're getting somewhere.
What is Alpha Star?
That's the Google AI. It beat all the pros because StarCraft 2 is a solvable game.
Well, that's Google. I mean, I wouldn't run that software on my computer regardless of who it is, because it's Google. Like, this guy doesn't, like...
Yeah.
Like, you can tell, like, just from this statement, like, this is the thing that really gets me about the faggot of screenshots, is they always manage to find the people who, like, blatantly talk in ways that just reveals that they don't actually play games. Like, they either flat out, they say they don't play games, or that they don't want to play games. And Spartak is basically saying he hasn't ever played a game with an AI before. He has never played Brood War before. And, I mean, okay, Brood War's AI is an absolute fucking disaster. But... it still is decent in the sense that it has accomplished more than what pretty much every game afterwards has ever accomplished. And you don't make it better and more challenging for human players by making it behave like a human. And
or
that's
by making
the problem
it cheat,
with a lot
or by
of this
using
shit.
a fucking neural network. Like, it's every single position
Yeah.
that this guy has at the beginning of his conversation is completely flawed from the get-go, which is what I was saying when you got disconnected. But the whole, that's what I mean, is like, that's why I proceeded this whole conversation, which unfortunately Ripcord cucked us with talking about fucking mind viruses and social media. It's like, I don't think you would be in a position where you would act and talk this definitively about something that you clearly, by way of how you communicate, just demonstrate that you know nothing about. At least not enough. Like, maybe you've played thousands and thousands of hours of fucking StarCraft 2, you lunatic. But that there's no AI in that game, so you didn't really practice much, did you? You didn't really learn much, did you?
I mean, StarCraft 2's AI counters void rays with roaches.
It's pretty revolutionary.
And uses 9,000 APM to spin workers around. So, like, what is the impression I get from the servers that faggot screen caps is that most of these people surround themselves in people who are basically just yes men at the absolute best. And since none of them actually play games, they don't really understand the context of any of this stuff that's ever brought up.
Well, I think another big part of it is also the fact that the few people who do provide dissident points or dissident opinions,
what's funny, like, if you read that second screenshot, and Pegasus says if this is done in such a manner where it doesn't cheat or whatever, and he still says it's the weakest thing, like, he's already basically decided it can't be done, it won't be done, but even if it is done, it will still suck, because he has never actually experienced single player content before.
No, that's the other thing is, like, so going back to our earlier conversation in this podcast about how things are horrible now compared to what they were before with regards to games. And, you know, a lot of that being due to lack of education, lack of critical thought, the fact that it's a lot easier to get into now, the fact that there's no enforcement of standards or even legal enforcement or legal action when you fuck up and you just scam people basically. All that stuff combines to the fact that you basically have no content now for younger people who didn't fucking play Brood War. Not that Brood War's AI was particularly epic anyway, as we've both pointed out, and as I've literally spent the last like 3 or 4 years trying to solve. And like, people don't even play actual games. They play these shitty knockoff cargo cult games.
I'm really
like StarCraft
confused.
2.
Like,
So they have no
I'm
context.
trying to understand this guy's position.
It's not understandable
missed all
because
this.
he doesn't actually have context for what the counter example would be, and he's too fucking blind to realize that he's like he's missing something that other people are talking about. So he just dismisses it outright instead of asking, why do you hold such a differing opinion than I do? Instead of acting like there's maybe something that he doesn't know, and instead of presenting his opinion in a way that doesn't seem like it's ironclad, there can't be anything else. No, with a fucking period and everything, man. Capital N2, the key to the end of all things. Like he just assumed, like he's not only assuming fallaciously, but he's also like communicating in such a way as if he's the one who's the authority here.
It's almost
not
like he
stating an
thinks that
opinion
RTS
whatsoever.
single player can't exist.
Well, no, he's talking about. He says that campaigns are way more interesting. He says it right there. He
But
says
campaigns rely on AI to be successful.
no, not in StarCraft 2. They don't.
Well, then they're not campaigns. They're fucking shitty carnival maps.
Yeah,
That's the truth of it.
that's Red Alert 3.
Exactly, and Red Alert 3 and StarCraft 2 share many things in common. They're both fucking failures.
Yeah, they're both ugly as fuck too.
Like, this guy, I don't understand. Like, he says there's a decline of RTS in popularity, which is not explained at all by a skirmish. It's
No.
explained by the fact that there hasn't been any good RTSs. I mean, skirmish still lumped into that, but not as an element of that, but just more like as a pedestrian. And now he's claiming that turn-based 4x and grand strategy are all better PvE experiences. In this context, it would mean that they're gaining popularity against RTS, but they're not.
No, the
In
thing that
fact,
replaced
like
RTS
Civilization
games
and
was
stuff like
MOBAs.
that is at some of its lowest points in history now because it's all an absolute failure. Heroes of Might and Magic basically stopped at Heroes of Might and Magic 3. You know, Age of Wonders 3 was an absolute fucking disaster. Like, those are some of the biggest names that I can really think of at the top of my head that are comparable in this kind of context. There's Total War, which I have heard as absolute shit in pretty much every respect, and the AI is absolutely horrendous and all of that, so I'm not going to count that. The only one I don't know about is Europa or
Yeah, it's Europa Universalis.
Europa.
It's just another one of those stupid grind games like Mountain Blade or whatever, where you just have to run around like a lunatic.
Mountain Blade was an absolute disaster too, and the AI is really horrible in that. Like, his argument is basically saying that games that are turn-based are better likely to have a PvE experience than skirmish and RTS. But like, you can't even compare those two. Like, he basically, like, this is what Reddit would come up and say, a little nice straw man keck. Because that's basically what he's saying is that, well, AI is bad and you can't make it good, but even if you could, you can't because skirmish is bad because 4x and strategy games or grand strategy games are better. And it's like, yeah, because this unrelated genre is better, that means that this is bad. It's just like straw man on top of straw. He's got like a fucking like Wicker Man festival going on here.
Well, he might have also been just confusing multiple points or something. We also don't have complete context because we're going off of fucking screenshots from Fagudo. So, can't always be sure, man. But that's what I mean, though. Like, this kind of uneducated, completely baseless, assumption-filled opinion was confusing enough to people like Fagudo, where this eventually got passed down into our hands. And now we've got to pick up the fucking pieces. Like, this is just a disaster. There's not an actual argument in this entire thing. Maybe we're missing some vital context, but I think a lot of it just wasn't supplied by the guy. So there's not really much of a point to laboring that much more. But I will say that on the topic of skirmish, I have been recently working on Melee AI and Melee maps. And I can tell you, it's a hell of a lot more rewarding than playing the fucking campaigns that I've had to suffer through in this goddamn game and all adjacent titles. Just by that alone, it's way more rewarding of an experience to fight against an AI that can actually beat me if I don't play well or play better.
Hello?
Yeah, hi.
It did it again, didn't it?
Yeah.
What did I...
I don't know.
Fucking God. It doesn't DC me
No.
like from the channel or anything like that anymore.
You have to
Like before, it would unhook me from the chat.
Yeah. Doesn't do
And
that anymore.
I'm basically talking, and then I give it to you, and then I hear nothing, and I'm like, hello, and you don't say anything, and I have to like rejoin that. Like right now it says that there's 3 people in the voice chat because I left, but it didn't like kick me out on my end. So on the client side says there's 2 of us here, but it says there's 3 fucking entries in the chat.
Yeah. Technology has gotten better with time, man.
This is the guy who thinks that Opus is a good codec, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Just fucking remember that. Anytime you think about Ripcord, just remember.
Case. Maybe he could
Cancel
make it
thinks
more
that
obvious.
Opus is good.
Yeah, he could make it more obvious when it fucking kicks you out, but that's about it.
What I was saying is that, like, I don't know what the fuck I even said last.
Yeah, I was just talking about the fact that I've been working on skirmish content, melee maps and melee AI lately, and it's been a hell of a lot more rewarding than suffering through campaigns that this guy probably thinks are great. And so because of the fact that his uninformed opinion, that with a bunch of baseless assumptions that are not contextualized or backed up at any point that we can understand, are now floating around on the internet in Fagudo screenshots. Then
I was saying,
really
you can't even compare this shit.
Yeah.
Like, he has built enough strawmans to have a fucking Wickerman festival.
Yeah, that's the last thing I heard from you is the Wickerman Festival.
Oh, then you did hear what I was saying. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
It
immediately
cut off
after
really
that,
quick
I
then.
started talking. You must have disconnected just as I started talking after that.
Yeah.
It's good timing.
Yes. Like, it's all insanity. And yeah, I worked with skirmish for a long time, and I know what can make a good skirmish and what can make a bad skirmish. And it's by not comparing it to shitty failure genres.
Yeah. Well, the other aspect to this too is the fact that we're both, like, when you were working on AI, I'm pretty sure you were still using that give money opcode and stuff because there wasn't really much of a way to do anything else. And now that I'm working on AI, I'm still running on it's like a 25% resource multiplier. So lower than it was before. Before it was 1.5. And they still weren't doing much with that money they were floating it. They're still floating a lot of it now, but it's mostly that they're out of gas, so they're floating a lot of minerals. So there just needs to be like code cleanup to make it so that they spend their minerals more aggressively.
Cheating is one of those really odd things about AI. Because in every single one of these games, especially in the 4x games and Grand Strategy, AI cheats a lot.
Yeah. And I'm trying to minimize as much like my AI cheating as much as possible. So much so that I make sure that the spell casting flags and whatnot, I want to make sure that they're picking targets that they can actually see, like they have active vision of. And eventually we'll have programming in there that tells them to scout and tells them to log like the available tech of their enemies and maybe respond based on that. I don't know how convoluted the scripts will get as a result of that. I'm going to obviously have to try to make sure that it's clean code, but it's a lot to try to work with to make the AI behave by the same rules that the player does. And until we can get them to be able to micro their units in any capacity and have tactical AI for like kiting and positioning units in front of siege tanks or whatever, it's going to be a real slow going in that respect. And they're probably also going to fall over in the early game a lot, just on the basis of the fact that they have these units that are very vital because there's so few of them in the early stages, but they just fucking throw them away like lunatics, sacrificing them to a single sunken colony because that was what attacked them instead of running by and attacking drones instead or something. So shit like that will happen all the fucking time, and not much that you can do about it. But I'm still able to make some pretty entertaining team games as a result of really sinking a lot of time into AI, really sinking a lot of time into learning how to develop good multiplayer maps that provide every player with enough tools, and equalizing the assumptions that you make based on map design for AI versus map design for players is one of the best things that happened. Me realizing, hey, I've got melee maps. I've got these designs of a melee variety. And that means that every single start location, every single area of the map needs to be exploitable by all players in a fair enough way that it doesn't disproportionately favor one start location over the other, and it doesn't disproportionately favor one team over the other or one race over the other, that pretty much everybody's got decent opportunity to deal with that stuff in their own way based on their own play styles. And that it obviously extends to AI when you design that way, as if a human player was going to be playing, and from the start location of your AI players, you start to realize how important it is that the AI are able to make the same decisions that the players are able to make, as well as just allowing yourself to conceptualize from in the first place that there needs to be some decision making happening. You're making the decisions as a AI scripter, but that doesn't mean that there's no decisions to make. That doesn't mean that you can't make it seem like the AI is actually making those decisions itself, or it doesn't mean that you can't make the AI make those decisions based on certain conditions. So there's all sorts of different stuff there that can be unpacked, and I don't even know if you're still connected. So
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
oh, epic.
I was gonna say that like the most important thing at the heart of any AI design is to make the game fun. And so like when it comes to like the cheating and stuff like that, I've always been like really careful with that kind of stuff.
But also if it's in service of like fixing the AI's fundamental flaws that you can't fix at the moment, then there's an actual justification for it. And
like there's a goal that you attain, and everything is a tool to obtaining that.
Right, exactly. And so the other portion of that is like, okay, well, if the AI is like floating more money than needed or has less money than needed, then what it probably doesn't need is more cheats, right? It needs to be smarter. And so in that context, maybe the answer to this problem might actually be like giving it more gas cheat than mineral cheat or something like that. But even then, it's not, I'm not giving the AI like a starting advantage that's completely alien to the player. I'm not giving the AI something that they cannot be engaged with whatsoever. The whole point is they still need to expand. They still need to take bases. They still start out with the same resources and starting units that you do because it's melee. So, of course, they already have all of the stuff that they have at their disposal. They already have all this shit. They can already do all this stuff. What it comes down to is whether or not you can make your AI engage the player and have the player be able to make certain decisions that would work in the context of a standard melee game. Were they successful, like killing off the enemy's workers or scouting the enemy to see what their tech path is. It's like you can't even scout in most campaign missions because of all the pre-play shit, and killing workers does nothing because they have all this money. So there's not like sniping overlords or killing supply structures. Well, they've got like a billion more pre-placed, and as the campaigns were made in engines like Warcraft 3 and StarCraft 2 that allow you to fuck with base stats, it became even more embarrassing with coral reefs that provide 90 fucking food. So it was even more ridiculous. And that's a case where like
fucking Warcraft 3 campaigns.
Yeah, it's like it facilitated even more shortcuts than were even possible in Brood War, well, vanilla Brood War. So it's really embarrassing in that respect. So then you take a step back and you say, all right, well, here's my AI. Yeah, it has some cheating associated with it with regards to its resources, but all the cheating is based around basic ideas, core mechanics of the game. And it's not like it's getting more stats that completely change how its units behave. It's just getting more money so that it can build more units because it's really bad at using those units. Now, if you can then work to try to make the AI really, really smart at spending all the money that it has, that will be a scalable process that doesn't require that they have any current amount of money for that code to function. It's just like, if I have this money, then I'm going to do this. As long as I have this much money, I'm going to start an attack party, or I'm going to start expanding, or whatever. And it's going to just follow that kind of logical code to its logical conclusion, which is it trying to do something. And that something is like achieving a goal, like you said, except the AI is trying to achieve the goal of beating the player. And that's never the goal of an AI in all of these campaigns and all of these contexts. The AI is always just like there for you to grind through, there for you to be alone with on the map. It's just so stupid.
The AI is just there basically just to consume time. That's pretty much it. That's a problem with all this shit. Is it's there just to consume time. Everything is always measured in how much time it consumes. That's why Blizzard removed the early game, because some investors or something must have said, hey, you know, this fucking random metric from TED Talk says that the average person is only awake for 10 minutes at a time. We should make our game only run 10 minutes at a time. And then Matt Cinema was like, okay, I'll hand that off to Browder-chan before he rage quits because we kill his shitty Dota clone.
No, it was an FPS. Oh, they canned the FPS project, and that's when Browder left. I thought that's what you were referencing.
Oh yeah, well,
StarCraft Ghost 2.
Browder got bounced from a lot of shit, but I'm pretty sure that Heroes of the Storm getting canned really kicked him in the balls too, because he basically went into StarCraft 2, failed horribly. He tried to make Dota 2, he failed horribly at something that basically is impossible to fail at. And then they came with Overweight, and he was like, "That's gross. I can do better." And then that also got canned, and then he rage quit.
How embarrassing!
It was really funny too, because he was so happy to finally be at Blizzard and be able to stick it to his coworkers at EA that he got to stick orcas on StarCraft, and he made his own Command and Conquer again. But
yeah, he made a mothership and everything.
In the end, he got sassed.
Unit.
I wonder, like, I would love to be the fly on the wall that sees just how much of the deranged shit in StarCraft 2 is just Broader going on a power trip. Because a very, very large chunk of Warcraft 3 is like Rob Pardo going on power trips, and then Metzen going on power trips, so not tard wrangling enough.
Well, imagine how much shit you'd see if you figured out, like, oh, wait, here's the stuff that Browder had concepts for that didn't get it into the game. Holy moly.
Yeah.
It's like half of those stuff actually did make it into the game, like the Shredder Mine or whatever it was. The Tempest, the old Tempest, the Shuriken carrier that Laconius ripped for his fucking Vile Aggression campaign for some reason. I don't remember. There was some weird shit, man. Why would they throw shurikens? Why would they call their interceptors shurikens? What is wrong with these people?
They were trying to be like, we look at us. We're making StarCraft 2. It's like StarCraft, but it's new. But people want StarCraft. Okay, I guess we'll put it in the carrier, but we'll make it new and hip and trendy and spin it on its head. So now it's a carrier that only attacks land units and has a shield, and people are like, but that's dumb and gimmicky. And Blizzard's like, okay, let's put it in the carrier. And then they put in the mothership, and Predators is like, yeah, motherships and orcas. We are literally playing Command and Conquer Generals Plant Hour.
Plant Hour souls. So have you watched any movies lately?
Movies? Did I watch any movies lately? I can actually just check my down. I don't think so. I don't think I've watched, like... I know I haven't been to a theater in over 10 years.
You should watch Day of the Dead by...
I watched End of Evangelion, and that was the last movie I watched.
Oh, okay. I don't know anything about it besides its anime. I always thought it was pronounced Evangelion because it had lion in it.
I don't know, honestly, how it's pronounced.
When I was like 12, I thought that. I know it's not pronounced anymore.
The scene opens up with like an 8-year-old jerking off to an unconscious 12-year-old or something like that. So it's actually something that I think would probably get it banned in modern day America if people knew it existed. But they don't know it exists. So
they filmed it in modern day America by the sound of it, so...
Yeah, it's definitely really got like that California vibe to it.
Yeah.
Most of the movie is spent being really pretentious, and there is vagina hands, but I guess it makes more sense than the OVAs that came out afterwards in some respects.
I went on a movie
I think
kick.
that the writers tried too hard, though.
Oh, did they?
And then the last movie I watched before that was Heaven's Feet 2. Lost Butts.
Feet?
Heaven's Feet. Yeah, it's the Fate Stay Night Heaven's Feet arc. It's pretty bad as expected of Nasu, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's got flashy colors, though, so...
Do you remember the movie I sent you before the blockening? The feud, the Furious Chris feud. I sent you a movie called 12 Angry Men. And then you sent me a song.
I remember that. I watched that, yeah.
I thought it was a pretty good movie.
That one was actually pretty good.
It's back in the black and white days.
I think that's one of the only black and white movies I've ever watched, actually.
It wound up being pretty all right, I think. I watched an older movie that's not older than that, but just an old movie from this, I think it's like the early 80s or something. Like I said earlier, it's called Day of the Dead. It's basically just like a fucking weird-ass zombie movie, and it's all about just misery. But the characters are pretty cartoony, but if you don't get turned off by that, because it's sort of played up, and instead of it being like something that they'd expect you to take seriously, it's basically just a story about how fucking fucked up life is in that realm, and then what would humans do in that situation, sort of. It's an entertaining enough film. It's not black and white. It does have insane zombies and some really epic moments of like body horror that are pretty comical now, I guess, looking back at it, but still, despite the special effects being kind of dated, it still feels really, I guess the term would be like visceral, because of the, like, you, even though you know it's fake, you're still believing in a way like, oh, that's actually something that might happen. Or something like, what would happen if the zombies
most
did that?
gore these days is like, for one, it looks really terrible.
Yeah,
because after people don't know how to use After Effects and they think they can just apply some filters, and it's really fake looking too. But it's also like so fucking over the top that you can't believe it's realistic at all.
Yeah, I watched a more recent film called Overlord, which is actually also about zombies, but I didn't know that when I was going into it. I didn't expect to go to back-to-back zombie films. It's not really
Last
about
of Us
zombies,
too.
though. Yeah, there you go. That's a film.
You were watching women's sports. Women's in quotations.
Church of sports. You got fucking all sorts of shit with that one. That was a big story for about 5 seconds, and then now I think everybody's already forgotten about it.
Yeah, they're all going to buy it anyways.
Yeah, of course.
Even though it's literally like a white knight going on a power trip.
The Overlord movie is pretty epic because it's about Nazi zombies. But it's like they don't really talk about it as if they were zombies. Like they don't even say the word zombie, I don't think. It's very obvious that they are zombies. Like they don't try to hide it. But they almost are just like, okay, now what? And what do we do now? Like instead of really lingering on it. So it's another one of those situations where it's like kind of a human story. Like what the fuck would humans do in that environment? A very epic opening scene. It would probably make you rather nauseous though, I think. Because it has a lot of fucking... I wasn't able to really pick out that many screen effects because I was watching it on what I assume is like a fucking Netflix rip or something because it was really grainy. Might just be the original film though. But yeah, despite the at times low picture quality, I thought it was a pretty neat film. Another one. Then the other film that I watched was Annihilation, which is a really generic fucking name, but it was actually an interesting and just bizarre. I want to say it was thought-provoking, but it was really just fucking strange. It was just a strange film, a science fiction film where like an alien plant or something crashes in, and it's not Zeratul. It crashes on Earth, and it just starts like creating this field of an air, like just a huge amount of life form changes happen where it starts to basically form everything into the same species. So a bunch of plants are like that. There's like plants that grow in the form of humans that were there.
Is it the Greta Thunberg virus?
I guess it did return to nature a lot, but it was real. It was there's some body horror stuff in that too. It's kind of an entertaining movie. There was one scene that really destroyed me though, which was when they're shooting a giant fucking alligator. That was clearly mutated in some capacity. And it's very clear that they didn't tell the actors where to aim their guns because they're aiming like above it. The way that it's shot is like they're trying to hide that. So they just show like a shot where you're looking at like a relative angle of where maybe the crocodile would be, but it's still the woman shooting above it. So it's really stupid. So that really destroyed me. That was like where I started eye rolling a little bit. But they have some pretty interesting iconography, man. Pretty interesting visuals. That's about it. That's all I've watched lately. I wanted to watch more movies, but I don't know what I'll watch next. I was going to watch Interstellar, but then it was like 3 hours long, and on top of that, it's like a science fiction movie about black holes. Also, the power of love. So that was really stupid. So like at first, I was like, "Oh yeah, cool, black holes, love that." Really interested in that. Hope to see some really interesting visuals.
Really political too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go.
Those ghetto documentaries are getting more edgy every day.
Wasn't expecting that one. Set myself up for it. You could say I fell in.
You fell in. You got trapped.
It's over.
Now someone's gonna have to fish you out.
That reminds me of when I was playing a Dungeons and Dragons game where I had all of my high school friends and my father, which is a really retarded fucking idea. And we were all playing, and I was the DM. And there was one part where my father's character just fucks some handmaiden or something. and it was some woman that they rescued, and my father was like, "I'm fucking this bitch" or something, and that's not even the best part. After that, somebody was like, "Hey, what if I want to fuck her?" And my father turned to the guy and said, "Hey, I'll tie you to a tree so you don't fall in." So that's my dad. Thanks, Dad.
Your dad needs to be on this podcast.
Dude, dad voice acting is pretty good. I get him to do that every once in a while. It's always epic. He starts punching Mike. So yeah, there you go. I suppose that's a fine enough way to sign off. We spent about 20 minutes talking about the actual topic, and the rest of it was just fuck and Discord.
Yeah, that honestly describes my average day. That's why I haven't bothered to make a coffee hour or anything, because I get interrupted 30 fucking times an hour. I've got 80 million things I'm trying to do at once.
At least when you're doing your own recording, you don't have to worry about Discord destroying it.
Yeah, that also is really annoying too, because usually I get stuck on something and I plan it out in my head. So, right. It's usually really random, and especially when I start. But I usually
stream of consciousness in a way, but you have some idea of where you're going, and then it just all falls apart afterwards.
I try to collect it all into some spots as I go along, but when I get interrupted, I really just lose my britches over that.
Yeah, then you have to listen back to it if you're doing a local recording or something. It's just a mess. So yeah. Any final thoughts to think leave our viewers with? Leave our humble flags.
Fuck summer.
Yeah, fuck summer.
It's gonna be I was hoping this could be the year we could finally buy an air conditioner, but nope, not gonna happen.
Maybe
so
after
we'll be fighting that 40
coronavirus.
Celsius and max humidity again real soon.
Hey, I heard, didn't Trump say that the heat was going to eradicate the coronavirus?
There are some people who are saying that, but I don't know, man. The coronavirus, I hope it just sticks around with us and kills off a couple billion more people, but at least around here, nobody really seems to care about it. I think the East Indians care about it, actually, or at least they're no longer shopping at the places I go anymore, because it's you were talking about Day of the Dead. That's what it's like every time I go outside. It is nonstop boomer apocalypse. I didn't know so many white people lived here, because you never see them.
How many whites are in your neighborhood, man?
They're all over the age of 70. They're all they can barely walk. They really shouldn't be out, especially in the heat. They're all in big groups too. It's big groups of them. It's not just little loners, little grandma. It's grandma's fucking tea party is coming out to play. And I'm watching in this band, I was sitting in the car for about a half an hour just melting in the fucking heat. I literally, no kidding, 1,000 fucking people go into that store in this time period. And but they don't stay in though. There was a word I was looking for and I lost it. But the rate of them just leaving right away is quite high, and I'm not really sure why. But I think they're looking for stuff that's no longer in stock, probably perishables, because that's what you hoard during an epidemic.
Eggs,
but
milk.
Yeah. Abs and chicken tendies too. Can't forget that.
Half of that shit would probably go bad by the time you get back to your house with this heat. Holy fuck.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of worried, because we were stuck in the car for a while and I had milk, and yeah, it was very hot in there, so I'm really hoping it didn't get too warm.
Yeah, as long as you use it soon enough, it should be fine.
Yeah. But yeah, no kidding. It is I didn't know that many white people lived here, and I didn't know that many white people didn't give a shit about the virus either. We have it. It is here. It's been a late coming here. We're kind of like Russia, where it's sort of I'm not sure really how much it is here, but there was a testing place that opened up about a month ago. In 10 minutes from here, they instantly picked up 50 cases right off the bat in the first day. Yeah. So it's definitely here. It's a threat. And if one person coughs in this fucking store, the body count is going to be 4 digits. That is what I said. And that is just the turnout of how many people are fucking there. We're talking at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the day. When they have a dedicated senior hour in the morning, most people aren't going to be there at fucking 7 o'clock. And I don't fucking blame them. But like when they are there, it's like you wouldn't know. Like the only thing that's really weird is how there's no East Indians, when it's almost always like 20 East Indians to one white person at the absolute best. Now I see like 2 East Indians, and then a couple what I presume to be either Africans or something like that, someone darker, not really obviously Indian anyways, and then the rest is all pure white. Like all like white hair and everything, like white top to bottom. Like there was like one young person, and I pointed it out to my grandmother, and they were waiting in some other place, and she said, "Oh yeah, it is literally all old white people. Why is it all old white people?" Like when you make people conscious of this and they notice it, it really strikes you as strange. Like it's very strange in all the different places how few young white people live here. I think the East Indians were the ones to hoard when it all first started. They just body slammed the stores because they have like 40, 50 persons a household. Yeah. And they just all went in as individuals and just emptied the stores. And they're sitting on their stash and they're keeping relatively safe. Especially since, you know, if one East Indian catches it, the whole fucking town's going to die in a week. You know, the white people, obviously, they're more like us, you know, living paycheck to paycheck, pension to pension. They can't really afford to do that. But it's just like crazy, like how little they actually give a shit. Like I'm seeing more and more gas masks as time goes on, but it's still like 1 person to 20 people is wearing any kind of protective gear.
That's insane.
And
that's everybody.
Most
here.
of them just don't care.
You can't even enter stores here without one.
Yeah. I don't think that's ever. I mean, if it happens here, there's no one to enforce it. We don't have law enforcement here at all. So now the other thing I'm really worried, or not really worried, but really concerned and confused about is every day at around 6, 7, 8 a.m., I hear cars honking for about 4 or 5 hours nonstop across town. And it is something that started with this virus, and I'm starting to think that there's like some kind of like cult that has formed somewhere in town that's probably like sacrificing white people to some kind of furnace or something like that to like summon Winnie the Pooh or something to come and save them. Like that's really the only theory I have as to why there's so many like it sounds like hundreds of cars, but I'm sure it's at least just a couple dozen. But they are determined to just sit there honking their fucking horns nonstop for so long. Like, how is there not noise complaints left and right? How are people not getting shot for this? If I can hear it this far across town, I can't imagine wherever it is.
Well, hail Honkler.
Hail Honkler.
Wait, why do clowns even honk anyway? It's because of their nose?
Yeah, it's their nose. Honk, honk. Clown world.
Hong Kong, conky.
Hong Kong, conky!
And with that, don't get raped, don't get AIDS, don't get coronavirus, and you'll be safe.
Remember to cup the balls when you slurp.
Yeah, well, I sometimes forget that.
At least you use your teeth on the crundle, right?
What's a crundle?
That's something for you to look up on Google image search.